Electric therapy? Human experiments. Just how inhumane is this abnormal human research center? Today, we're bringing you the 2008 zombie movie Insanitarium. A deranged director conducts experiments on live humans, ultimately triggering a catastrophe that destroys the city. The story begins. Jack's mother recently passed away in an accident. Unable to accept reality, his sister Lily suffered a mental breakdown and even had suicidal thoughts, leading to her being forcibly taken to a psychiatric hospital. Jack repeatedly requested to bring his sister home so that their family doctor could take care of her, but the hospital rejected him with various excuses. They wouldn't even allow him to see her. Determined to rescue his sister, Jack decided to infiltrate the hospital. He cut off his long hair, inflicted wounds on himself, and went shirtless into a busy street, pretending to be insane and causing a scene.
Don't touch me! Touch me! Don't touch me!
Soon, someone called the police. The officers arrived and restrained Jack. Upon hearing him claim that he wasn't sick, the police immediately contacted the psychiatric hospital. A doctor arrived, injected Jack with a sedative, and he quickly lost consciousness. Just like that, he was successfully admitted to the psychiatric hospital. Dr. Janetti conducted an initial assessment and concluded that Jack was severely ill, so he assigned him to the high-security ward for critical patients. The patients here were the most dangerous of the mentally ill. Each had committed some kind of crime. Security guard Charles specifically warned Jack to stay away from an old man, who, despite his frail appearance, was the most twisted of them all. He had murdered an entire family next door and preserved their corpses, violating them for months. Jack was horrified upon hearing this. But just as Charles was about to leave, he noticed something unusual about Hawthorne. Without thinking, he rushed to check on him, unaware that Hawthorne was merely pretending to be sick. Thanks to Jack's warning, Charles narrowly escaped death. However, Jack's interference enraged Hawthorne. He had ruined his plan. Hawthorne swore that once he got out, he would make Jack pay. Hawthorne's agitation triggered the other patients, who erupted into a frenzy of screaming, nearly driving Jack to the brink of madness. Fortunately, Jack didn't stay in the high-security ward for long. The next day, Dr. Janetti reassessed him and decided he was still treatable, transferring him to a general ward. On the way to his new room, a psychotic patient suddenly lunged forward, grabbing Nurse Nancy by the throat and pinning her against the wall. Seeing Nancy about to suffocate, Jack quickly pressed the emergency alarm. Charles rushed to the scene, but the patient refused to let go until Dr. Gianetti himself arrived. Only then did the patient, frightened, release his grip. The patient was taken away, and Jack was sent to his room. Once Nancy left, Jack immediately examined the window structure, trying to find a way to open it from the inside. Just then he heard a noise from the closet. When he opened it, he was shocked to find a patient hiding inside. Jack asked what he was doing there, and Dave hurriedly explained that he meant no harm. He had followed Jack because he noticed he wasn't like the other patients. Dave revealed that every patient taken upstairs by Dr. Gianetti returned acting strangely, becoming excessively violent with their eyes turning white. He suspected that Dr. Gianetti was conducting human experiments, turning patients into something even more terrifying than the mentally ill. In fact, he was right. At that very moment, Dr. Gianetti was torturing the patient from earlier. When the man finally lost consciousness from the pain, the doctor injected him with a mysterious serum. It was this very serum that caused the patients to mutate. Realizing the severity of the situation, Jack immediately went to find his sister. But when Lily saw her brother disguised as a psychiatric patient to rescue her, she didn't appreciate his efforts. Instead, she lashed out, scolding him for coming, insisting that she never planned to leave in the first place. With that, Lily turned and walked away. But Jack refused to give up. He was determined to take his sister out of there no matter what. He continued attempting to open the window, but ended up cutting his hand. Later, the nurses gathered everyone to sit together and share their stories. When it was Jack's turn, his injured finger began to drip blood, and a terrifying scene unfolded. Loomis, sitting across from him, smelled the blood and suddenly went berserk, lunging at Jack. Not only that, but an elderly woman also began licking the blood off the floor in a frenzy. Jack manages to push Loomis away, but Loomis then attacks a nurse, biting her hand. Loomis looked just like a zombie, thirsting for blood. If Charles hadn't arrived in time and stunned Loomis with a taser, the consequences would have been unimaginable. After this incident, Jack was completely terrified. If things continued like this, he might not survive. He went straight to Doctor. Gianetti's office, confessing that he had faked his illness and pleading to be released immediately. But how could Dr. Janetti believe him? A psychiatric patient would never admit they are sick. Even if he knew Jack was faking it, Dr. Gianetti had no intention of letting him go. Jack grew agitated and shouted that he wasn't sick, but instead of getting out, he was thrown back into the high-security ward. Within a day, he was driven to his limit by the patients. Left with no choice, he finally admitted to being sick, and Dr. Gianetti allowed him to return to the general ward. Jack finally understood. Once someone entered this psychiatric hospital, there was no way out. If he couldn't leave openly, he had to escape. He discussed with Dave, and they planned to take his sister and flee. Late at night, the two sneaked out of their rooms. While Charles was out on patrol, they slipped into the security office and successfully stole an access card. Jack skillfully avoided all the surveillance cameras and used the card to enter his sister's ward. This time, Lily's attitude had changed. When she saw her brother, she admitted she was scared and begged him to take her away. She had already learned about the human experiments. Every night, she could clearly hear the screams of the other patients. She just wanted to die, but she didn't want to be a test subject, let alone turn into a monster. Jack promised he would get her out, but not tonight. The hospital was heavily guarded, and escaping wouldn't be easy. They needed a flawless plan. Afraid of being caught if he stayed too long, Jack said goodbye to his sister and returned to his room. But just as he reached the stairwell, he saw a security guard coming up from below. With no other choice, he ran upstairs. By accident, he stumbled into Dr. Gianetti's laboratory. A metal cage caught his attention. When he stepped closer, he nearly fainted from fright. Loomis, the man who had attacked him, was locked inside. Regaining his composure, Jack spotted a bottle of serum on a nearby shelf. Suddenly, he heard footsteps outside and quickly hid in a corner. Dr. Janetti and his assistant Vera entered the lab, discussing the serum. Vera warned Dr. Gianetti that the serum was extremely dangerous. It not only mutated the patients, but was also highly contagious. But Dr. Gianetti didn't care. He saw it as a technological breakthrough, proof that his serum was evolving inside the patients. After a brief discussion, they left the lab. Jack seized the opportunity to sneak back to his room. Holding the deadly serum in his hands, he knew he couldn't let Dr. Gianetti continue his experiments. He had to expose the truth. The next morning, Jack met with Dave again to plan their next move. But when Dave learned that Jack not only wanted to escape, but also take down Dr. Janetti, he hesitated, thinking it was too dangerous. As they spoke, something terrifying happened. A patient suddenly snapped and strangled a cat to death with his bare hands. The smell of blood sent the other patients into a frenzy. Jack was tackled to the ground by one of them. Once again, Charles arrived just in time, using a taser to subdue the out-of-control patient and restore order. Witnessing yet another mutation, Jack knew he couldn't wait any longer. He went straight to Nancy, demanding to see his sister, only to be told that Lily had been taken to Dr. Janetti's lab. Realizing that his sister was about to become the next test subject, Jack begged Nancy for help. But instead of helping, Nancy sent him back to his room. Just when Jack was at a loss for what to do, the door suddenly opened. Dave had changed his mind. He decided to help. He drugged a guard and stole his keys. With the keys in hand, Jack wasted no time and sprang into action. Meanwhile, Lily was in grave danger. She was strapped to a hospital bed in the lab, moments away from being experimented on. But an accident occurred. While feeding Loomis, Vera got too close and he grabbed her, snapping her arm in half. Dr. Gianetti rushed in and immediately tended to Vera's injuries. Then he checked the security monitors and discovered that Jack and Dave had escaped their rooms. He called for security, but there was no response. In a moment of panic, Dr. Janetti accidentally short-circuited the hospital's power system. Now everything was ruined. The mutated patients in the high-security ward were all set free. The worst part was that Jack and Dave were right outside the ward, and they were suddenly swarmed by a horde of bloodthirsty monsters. The two fought back, managing to shut the door and push them back with a taser. But the danger wasn't over yet. Like zombies, the infected patients began chasing them. At the last second, Jack and Dave rushed into the lab, locking the creatures outside. Lily was still lying on the hospital bed, unharmed, but completely terrified by what she had just witnessed. They planned to escape together, but as soon as they stepped out of the lab, they were horrified to find a patient mutilating himself, while the other patients were nowhere to be seen. They made their way back to the high-security ward without encountering a single patient. However, the bloodstains on the floor reminded them that they needed to get out of there as soon as possible. Sure enough, when they opened the stairwell door and saw that the exit was blocked, they realized they had walked into a trap. The next second, the missing patients dropped down from the ceiling. Their only option was to take the elevator, but Jack needed time. Lily and Dave stood in front with tasers ready to fight. Dave took down one patient with a single strike, while Lily handled another woman. Just when they thought they were in for a brutal battle, the other patients suddenly dragged the fallen ones away and began eating them on the spot. It seemed that as long as there was food, these patients weren't picky. Seizing the opportunity, Jack opened the elevator doors, and they quickly jumped inside. Hawthorne grabbed onto the elevator doors, still trying to get in, but Jack slashed his throat with a knife. Just like that, they barely made it downstairs in one piece. But what they didn't expect was that the lower floor was also in complete chaos. Blood was everywhere. Clearly, all the patients had escaped. Soon, a horde of crazed patients came charging toward them. They quickly shut the hallway doors and jammed them shut with wooden planks. Just as they were about to continue their escape, a chair flew out from the nurse's station. It was Nancy, the only survivor. Jack told Nancy to come with them, but she delivered devastating news. Whenever the building's power short circuits, the entire facility automatically locks down, meaning they couldn't leave through the main entrance. Hearing this, they had no choice but to find another way out. They first went to the kitchen and each picked up a weapon. Just as they were about to move on, a swarm of frenzied patients stormed in. After a fierce fight, they managed to escape through the stairwell and found a handgun in Dr. Gianetti's office. Passing by a patient ward, they found Vera barely clinging to life. Aside from Dr. Janetti, Vera was the only one who knew the way out. It turned out that when the mental institution was designed, Dr. Gianetti had included an emergency escape route leading directly to the roof, with the entrance in the fourth-floor lab. There was also a laundry chute that bypassed the patients and led directly to the fourth floor. Vera knew she wouldn't make it. She had been bitten and would soon turn into a monster. Not wanting to suffer that fate, she begged them to end her misery. Nancy granted her wish, injecting her with a lethal dose of medication. After leaving the ward, they followed Vera's escape route and headed for the laundry chute. But along the way, a patient suddenly attacked, pouncing on Nancy and biting her neck. Although Jack quickly shot the patient dead, Nancy had already stopped breathing. Lily quickly pulled Jack away, urging him to keep moving. They climbed up the chute, navigating through twists and turns until they reached the fourth floor. The high-security ward had been painted red with blood. The gruesome sight sent chills down their spines. Clearly, the patients had turned on each other. But what they didn't expect was that Hawthorne was still alive. The surgical knife in his hand had kept him going until the end. Without hesitation, he lunged at Jack, slashing at him repeatedly. Jack raised his arm to block the fatal strikes. Seeing this, Lily rushed in, kicking Hawthorne to the ground. Then, she picked up the surgical knife from the ground and ended his life of sin. Afterward, they made their way to the lab and found the secret passage Vera had mentioned. But just as they were about to open the entrance, Dr. Gianetti, who had been missing, suddenly appeared. He had Dave in his grasp. Right before their eyes, he mercilessly drove the ice pick into Dave's skull. It was clear that Dr. Janetti was the most terrifying monster of all. Furious, Jack tried to avenge Dave, but Dr. Janetti easily took him down. Just as he was about to be stabbed to death by Dr. Gianetti's ice pick, Jack erupted with a surge of strength. He swiftly seized the weapon and drove it into Dr. Gianetti's body. With Lily's help, they finally subdued him. But simply killing Dr. Gianetti would be letting him off too easily. So, the siblings tied him up outside the metal cage and handed him over to Loomis inside. By this point, Loomis was starving. He grabbed Dr. Gianetti's head with both hands. As Jack and Lily climbed through the secret tunnel, they heard Dr. Gianetti's screams echoing behind them. They reached the rooftop and finally escaped the horrific asylum by climbing down the external ladder. When they reached the streets, they ran into a police car. After hearing what had happened in the hospital, the officers didn't leave or call for backup. Ignoring Jack and Lily's warnings, they opened the hospital doors to check the situation inside. A massive horde of crazed patients had been waiting for this moment. To their horror, Dr. Gianetti was still alive. The patients swarmed out instantly, tearing two officers apart on the spot. Jack and Lily cowered inside the police car, trembling. They could only watch helplessly as the deranged patients charged toward the crowded city.